Welcome and thanks for joining us back to another book review. Today we're reviewing Simon Sinek's new book, The Infinite Game. So, really great read. Would highly recommend it. In the past, I think he's on our radar. After his previous great books, the Start with Why, Leaders Eat Last, and
Your Why.
Yeah, Find Your Way.
Find your why.
And now this one. So, great thinker. We actually reached out to him hoping that he might join us and we could do a live broadcast. It would have been great to pick his brain. But me and Tony will try to pick it up and do a good job here. So, digging into it, hope you had the opportunity to read and can follow along and comment with us. What are we talking about here when we talk about finite and infinite games?
Yeah. So in my words, finite is the thinking that you're, as somebody said, it's kind of like a chess game, right? There's an end to it, and two people are doing it, maybe more, but there's competition and there's an end to it, obviously, right? It's finite. But that type of thinking has you looking to win, right? Short-term thinking,
Sure.
Oftentimes, compared to infinite, where you're really thinking,
Long
making
term.
things better, as opposed to an end game where you're looking to just
To win.
to win
At a finite end state.
Yeah.
Whereas-
so some great examples of that we'll go over.
Right,
now.
we'll get into examples. Maybe that'll help you understand better. But I think one of the points he tries to say is that if it's an infinite game, then the point is not to win. The point is to continue the thing,
To get
whatever
better.
you're doing, to make sure that it continues to go for future participants or that you can participate in something better in the future, et cetera. And of course, you could have lots of different iterations of this. I think, obviously, the easy jump to conclusion is to think about business, right? That's a huge difference in mentality of, does someone want to make a better society and take care of employees so that, there's future people that can buy cars, like way long time ago, Ford, when people said you can't pay people that much, you will never make money, Of course,
Right.
he helped to make a middle class that lots of people could buy cars, and look how many cars they've sold for decades now, right? So let's get into some of these examples, and also, some of the historical things that weren't necessarily companies. So, Tony, you said one of your favorites was the Kodak example, so maybe take us off with that one.
Yeah. So the Kodak example, and again, this is the end game, what you're thinking about, but not many people realize this because Kodak is not in the camera business for the most part now. They distribute to professionals that want film, but they had developed the digital technology before anybody else. They got some patents on it, but the executives at the time were more focused on getting the short-term money out of what they were doing. So if they were really going to change and go the way of the long-term future, obviously today would have been better for the company, but not as good necessarily for the executives at that time. So they made the focus, instead of just squeezing what they could out of it, they really predicted well. They thought, wait, we've got 10 more years here
Before somebody else comes up with it.
before digital really starts to do things in the market. So let's just squeeze what we can out of what we have and focus on that. So, and that is why, Kodak Eastman is the man who really built that. He was a visionary and he had
Right,
that.
that is the
infinite
real
game.
irony, is originally he really loved just photography and making it a thing
And
and
wanted-
helping people to be able to utilize this new technology to make life better, to save memories and document things, and that was their mission, and they really did awesome and became a huge company because they had a passion for doing that, and unfortunately eventually after he was gone and all remnants of that type of kind of visionary leadership with a purpose was gone, those next in line executives made the decision to milk the income stream rather than to take the short-term hit to their revenue from film and to change to what the new thing was that was going to be good for the next generation of people wanting to capture memories and document things, and and so unfortunately it took them under. pretty much.
Yeah, they're barely in business now. So.
Right.
What about you?
I really like that example as well too. Obviously, we talked about Ford, and then of course I think they traveled a similar path of Kodak, probably not as bad, until they had a new leader come in and basically say, hey, we need to make great cars that people like driving, not just have the biggest market share, right? And that, I think one of it was kind of a funny example that every executive and leadership person at Ford drove a Ford. They had no competitors' cars or anything. So they had even no comparison of how good or different their product was from the competition out there. And so that's an example of that. And then, kind of digging into another bad example, and I think we laughed about this because, it was all the rage, 20, 25 years ago, to say that Jack Welch was the greatest leader corporate-wise, and all he did for GE, Simon takes pretty good hit on Jack and GE in terms of, that epitomized kind of that 80s to 2000, time period where executives and leadership were, being so cutthroat to maximize profits. And really, truthfully, if you look at it, even though he probably got out at the exact right point, cannibalizing that company to maximize profits for the short and midterm, that led to catastrophic results for GE. I mean, look where they are now from, and GM, same way too. I mean, there used to be a saying that says, as GE and GM go, so goes the U.S. economy, and that's laughable now, right? And of course, they had all the money and power and potential to do awesome things, but I think it absolutely relates to what we're talking about in this book of why they failed, right?
And Ford has come back on that track some over the last 10, 15 years. But, I mean, look at Honda and Toyota. They've really taken over because of that mindset, and Tesla, for that matter, right?
Sure.
It's about getting
about building something awesome, to solve a problem and to be a solution for the future. And the other example, before we get to probably the two best, was CVS.
CVS was one of my favorites because if out there in the cross country, CVS, Rite Aid, and Walgreens, and CVS made a crazy decision to say, we're not selling cigarettes anymore. There's nothing driving the decision, but they just said we're not going to. So
because it doesn't make people healthy, and that's our mission, and we should not be just trying to make money off of that.
Right, they're a pharmacist, right? And here they are getting the same people, kind of the circle of life, right? Smoke all those cigarettes, so then you got to come back and get the pharmaceuticals. But they stopped doing it. And people thought, okay, well, somebody else is going to sell the cigarettes. So what was very interesting, so it wasn't just their decision, but what came from that was people quit smoking.
Yeah,
I'm
just it wasn't available, but the cessation products were available.
And the other stuff, the cessation stuff. And it was interesting to me, they say 70% of people want to quit smoking, so they're looking for help doing that. I'm surprised it's only 70. I wish it was 100, but nonetheless, they did that. And converse that with Walgreens, whose mission statement is to help, I don't know exactly what it is, but to help people make, better decisions about their health or whatever, and yet they're still selling the cigarettes,
And Rite Aid too. And Rite Aid even made a statement to say, we're not doing anything illegal.
Right.
Nobody said you were, but I think that's a lot of politics and things are going around today. It's not about what's legal and illegal. There's a big difference between what's right and what's not right. And even though that's subjective to a lot of people, if you say that something are your values, or that this is important to us and it's right or wrong, and then you just don't do that. Come on, you defined that right and wrong. It's not even some subjective thing, right? But again, that's what he gets to that point, and I think we, the two best examples were, I think, of doing things right, were Apple and Disney, and I don't think a lot of people, I think he does a good job of telling a story about Disney that a lot of people didn't know. It's he kind of went his own way and made Steamboat Willie and, Mickey Mouse pretty much. And there was a company there, and he actually left it because they tried to commoditize it. And then he started, Walt Disney, and made Disneyland or Disney World and what so, and really wanted to stay true to like making an awesome place for people and kids. And then they stayed true to that. I mean, I think for the longest time. And then Apple kind of the same way too. I mean, right at the beginning of it, they were going to, they had this product that they were rolling out, Wozniak and Jobs, and they just said, after they went to Xerox and found this new GUI thing, they were like, we gotta scrap all that. We gotta do something like this because it's gonna empower a lot more people. And most of the people that were business owners are like, if we do this, we may destroy the company, or we may, blow up the company.
Yeah.
And he was like, better us than someone else. You gotta do the right thing,
Right.
you know? And so that is a really cool thing. That's somebody that thinks about it as an infinite thing. It wasn't trying to beat a quarter or make some money in the next 5 or 10 years. It was about empowering people to have computers to change the world.
Well, and so prior to them coming up with the PC and making that, more commonplace, IBM hadn't been doing that, but IBM shifted gears, and within a year, they were able to get a lot more PCs and ready to go. And what did Apple do? Apple, congratulated them and said, "Hey, welcome to the PC race." So they
help us make the world a better place. We're happy to have you.
A better place. We're happy to have you. And there was a cheer from one of those people. So Apple had a couple iterations behind Steve Jobs in terms of.
And another good fail one was the BlackBerry, right? Because BlackBerry dominated business devices.
Right.
And of course, when the iPhone started coming in and around, they just abandoned where they were and tried to just copy the iPhone, and they just couldn't do it quite as well. And where are they now? I mean, they could have just owned that, and they didn't. But, so, anyways, we'll go past. And I think a non-business example, was Vietnam, right? So we were playing the finite game, and for all intents and purposes, from just about every metric you could judge in the short and midterm, we won that. We killed a whole lot more of them. We blew up just about everything.
We won a lot of battles and lost the war.
Right. But, we weren't thinking infinitely in terms of like, is this sustainable? What are we doing to these people? What are we going to get from this? What are we sacrificing at home to do what we're doing over here? So, we're not going to get all into the whole details of that, but a great example there. As well. And another example he puts out there, I'm not going to get into it. Read the book if you haven't, is the war on drugs. It's like, you're not going to win that. I mean, drug dealers are going to go somewhere else. They're going to find something else to do. You just, you have to make it sustainable to where it's just so uncomfortable for them or hard for them. But it's sustainable for everybody else, that you reduce it as much as possible. But anyways, so I think, one of the primary principles that he says, what makes something kind of an infinite game, if you're going to run an organization or you're a leader, or what's so, and it's having a just cause. It's like just cause is the quote. And so, what is your cause? Just like we talked about Apple, it was empower people to have personal computers, to be able to change the world, fight against, the man, and what so, and make the world a better place. What was, the mission for Disney or for Ford. You could see these things, and it wasn't to just produce a certain amount of cars and make a certain amount of money. And some you see now with like some social enterprise companies and which we're going to have a thing on that coming up in a few weeks. You can tune into that. But some people, it's we produce our product so that we can hire and employ more people to have a good life, and so, that's a pretty good, kind of infinite game type thing.
Well, and one of the difficulties these companies have is when they go public, is it United or American that gave a big pay raise, a good pay raise, not huge, but a good pay raise to the pilots, and other employees. And a line from Wall Street was, once again, Wall Street loses out as the employees get the share of the profit.
And wealth transfer to employees or something like that.
Transfer, and shareholders are left with the scraps. And I thought that is exactly the mindset of Wall Street. So here you've got these people, it's really good for society, they're going to make more money, do well. And that's so often the case, especially when companies go public. Employees often are the ones that get cut first, and it's such a great thing for Wall Street to see that.
Dedicates a whole section of the book to like fake causes, which I thought was really good because there are lots of things that I think fool people into thinking that there's a purpose or this or that. I think the best example of it, even though I think we all, have a soft spot in our heart for it, one of the types of fake causes are moonshots, which comes from JFK and going to the moon, right? And a great speech, and obviously we did it. I know there's a minority of you all out there that thinks we didn't, but we did it. But again, that is not an infinite type game. Now, if he said, we need to go to the moon because we can do it, and then that's going to help us get to Mars, and then that's going to help humanity be better and get out into the stars, and it's the first step to this long thing, that would be a just cause, right? A long-term, infinite type thing. But just to go to the moon just because we wanted to beat the Russians, and then we didn't really do anything with it after that, it was a publicity stunt. Yeah. And it's great that we created all this technology and it helped us out, for sure, not arguing that. But it's a good illustration of proving a point that kind of strikes us at our heart a little bit because we love those American triumphs. Yeah. And of course it was a great speech, and JFK was an awesome person. But it's a good illustrative point. A lot of companies want to be the best. We're going to be the best in this industry, serve more people, have the biggest market share. Those are not just causes. Those are just, intermediate slogans to make more money.
Yeah, Microsoft had that against Apple often, right? And the people at Apple would just kind of shrug and say, well, we don't have direct competition. We're just trying to be better.
Right.
So.
Right. And we see this a lot in our industry, and you may, depending on the industry that you're in, is, growth for growth's sake. We got to get a bigger market share. We got to grow 20% per year. If you're not growing, you're dying. And that's not necessarily true. Over time, it'd be nice to continually grow and but sometimes you got to shrink. I mean, I cannot think of the Ford CEO's name that kind of turned it around for them off the top of my head. But one of the things that he talked about, or that they talked about him, was that most of the most successful, most profitable car companies were not the ones with the biggest market share. They were the ones that really had a vision and produced the best stuff for a reason, the niche or whatever they produced it for.
Well, he sold off Jaguar and maybe Land Rover, something else. Yeah. I mean, he got more to focus.
So growth for growth's sake is not necessarily a good thing. And that comes to like environmentalism and everything like that. What are we going to do? Just keep getting bigger and bigger and more until it's like all crowded out, and to take a hit out of Pixar's WALL-E, we just have crap everywhere and no plants, and what's the point of that, right? And then, just because even like when we help people do environmentally, socially responsible investing, and they talk about corporate social responsibility, there's a big thing in that industry called greenwashing. It's where you're just trying to act like you're doing good, so you can get the publicity for it. And I think a lot of publicly traded companies these days are guilty of this. Even when you see some of the banks play those commercials about how they care about people and how they're refunding overdraft fees. Like, if you really cared about people, you wouldn't charge overdraft fees in the first place.
Right.
It's outrageous. Like, just decline the charge.
Right. Wells Fargo had its place in the book about being
bad. Yeah, absolutely.
Time and time again.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. So kind of the last thing we'll talk about before we wrap it up with the conclusion. I think is something that I'm not sure if it's something that he defined, but he definitely brought it to my attention, was the ethical fading, right? Is that, a lot of people are good, or, they have like these ethics and maybe even morals built into their organizations, but over time, from the pressures of performance and how the company structures incentives and the peer pressure and what the reward and punishment is, that people end up justifying doing things that are morally or ethically dubious to survive and succeed, which may give you a short-term pop, but in the long term, it's probably not going to be successful for anybody, the organization or the individual.
Yeah, and oftentimes it's a slippery slope, right? It's just you let a little go, then a little go, then a little go. And oftentimes these people have to meet sales numbers, and the metrics are wrong. They're not for that ultimate goal of doing well for the company. And oftentimes the metrics lead people like, hey, open as many credit cards accounts as you can, and it's like, well, is that really best
Right.
for the clients and society. In the
Yeah.
long
And is it
run.
even real? Because a lot of the fake accounts that Wells Fargo opened, like it wasn't even real.
Right.
You know? And the only way to possibly make money from that is to defraud the client by charging them fees or would sell for something that they didn't even open, which is eventually going to get refunded. So, like, what's the point? And then we had all these human beings wasting their time to do something that has absolutely no point,
Right.
that hurt a bunch of other people, diminished their image. Anyways.
Yeah.
You know, I think one of the things that affects us all right now, especially, you know, in this highly contentious election thing that he brings up, is like cause-blindness. It's like you can get so caught up in a cause or something that you believe that you won't even take the time to look at the other side's perspective or what.
Yeah.
So, and I mean, absolutely, I think I get caught up in this because it just blows my mind, all the things that's happened with the Trump administration and what's so that, you know, anybody can think that it's right, you know? And then on the opposite side, we see even some of our own family and clients in the exact opposite way to say, you know, this person's the greatest person. I just can't see how people are persecuting him. And so, you know, I don't know. I mean, I think there needs to be some give and take on both sides.
Yeah.
But yeah, cause-blindness is real, and I think you know, we can all see it, whether it's you personally or maybe you're more in the middle and you see that with some of your family, friends, and coworkers. But I think we all need to work together,
Yeah.
you know, to win and succeed, and have awesome organizations, whether that be the United States of America,
Yeah.
or our companies, or our families, etc. So
And look more at what we're trying to accomplish in things as opposed to some of the things that are done
Right.
in the name of accomplishing those, and it's not accomplishing those things.
Right, so wrapping it up, conclusion-wise, great book. It's a very easy read. If you're gonna read it on Audible, I think it's only like 6 hours and some change long. I think it has tremendous points and impact. It's something I believed for a long time,
Yeah.
that capitalism is just kind of broken
Yeah.
the way that it is in most places around the world. Capitalism shouldn't be maximization of profit ahead of all other things. And I think at the beginning of the book, he illustrates that very well, you know, talking about until, you know, the last like 40 or 50 years, capitalism wasn't really pursued that way except for, you know, maybe some of the robber barons back in the late 1800s and early 1900s. But it's destructive to maximize profits at the expense of all of their stakeholders, whether that's your community, your workers, the environment, values in general that make a well-functioning society. And so I don't know if he made this term up either, but I liked it. But it was like capitalism abuse. Like capitalism can work. But you should want to make the best bread if you're a baker just because you want consumers to like it.
Right.
And it's going to make sure that there's consumers around in the future. You're not tearing up the environment to do it.
Yeah.
And that your kids are going to have a life. So it's like capitalism doesn't have to be destructive, but it is these days.
It is,
You know?
and I don't think, I think
Yeah.
we both really appreciate capitalism, but
Yeah.
capitalism needs to have a collar around it. I mean, you know, and I don't want to confuse that with entrepreneurs, and I think, you know, we need
Yeah.
entrepreneurs and we need these things and we need what America has done, but it's when, you know, private interests come in and then kind of suck the lifeline out of companies and drive them in the wrong direction.
Yeah.
I think that's a problem, but
Well, he said is Milton Friedman, like gone
Yeah.
bonkers and wrong, and it's the shareholders that really did it. If you have small entrepreneurs or business owners that are really in charge of their own thing and responsible to consumers and their own society, and they make the decisions, most of the time they'll make the right decision. When you
Yeah.
put these other shareholders out there with business colleges telling people that their only responsibility is to maximize value for shareholders, you get these convoluted, huge organizations that are hijacking the capital of our world.
yeah.
You know? So anyways.
I will say, I totally agree with you. This is a very good read. He does some very good illustrations. You know, what's interesting is there's a lot of companies who have always tried to do the right thing and that we don't talk about that have probably failed along the way too.
Oh, sure.
But what good is it, if, in my opinion, if you're not trying to do that? And unfortunately, I think I would rather see employees start you know, and not do it any way you want, but more in a sense that, hey, don't work for those companies that don't
For sure.
have the real best long-term interest
Right.
in the company.
Right.
So anyway,
Yeah, and join us, I think it's second week of December when we're gonna go over talking about social enterprises and aligning your dollars with your values, and even understanding what a social enterprise is, how you can interact with these things, and a lot of times get maybe more silue out of your dollars, make the world a better place, etc. So join us next week with Chad Silverstein, Restart Works. And then after that, our financial planning subject is going to be looking at planning and tax opportunities for small business owners. And if you're an independent contractor, who knows, with all the stuff that's going on with Corona, there's a lot of people now getting paid 1099 or picking up this work or that work. And if you're lucky enough to have been ahead out of this, there are some really good opportunities for tax savings. Or even if you don't need that, to get a good amount of Roth money. So Tony's going to go over that. It's going to be a great one. Join us for that. And then our next book review is going to be A Promised Land by Barack Obama. So hope you guys enjoyed this one. Read along with us. Really great read. Let us know your thoughts. And of course, if there's anything we can ever do to help you, let us know. We're here for you, as we are also a social enterprise. So have a great weekend. Happy Thanksgiving. We'll be off next week. So that live broadcast the week after Thanksgiving, we'll be off next week. But hope you guys have a great one with family. Be safe. Don't get too big a turkey.
Yeah.
The feds will be after you because they know you have more than 10 people. See you then.
yeah, buy two.